So this is my SR20DET that I just picked up. It's a black top. Traded it for some chrome wheels that I had, the Rays 57 CRs, and some cash. Felt like it was a good deal. The car hasn't really been running, and you know, when I do run it, I'm over at drift events. My chrome wheels were supposed to be for, you know, when I go to car meets and whatnot, so I decided to just trade those. I think it would be a better idea to have an SR, you know, a little backup motor. Get this one cleaned up, make sure it's reliable, and then just run it while I get the other ones built. So yeah, I'm just gonna do a little breakdown of this motor, show you guys all the parts, locations, where everything is, what is what, take everything off, get her cleaned up, restore it pretty much, make sure she's good to run. So let's get this started. So I will be starting on the front side of the motor to get the belts off the pulleys. Typically your SR20 has about 4 to 5 different pulley systems. As you can see, I only have 4. That's because I'm missing the AC compressor system that sits right below the power steering pump based off of Nissan's standard component locations. Both belts on the system are already loose. That's because I already started. But to make it easy, there is a nut on the slotted bracket right below the pump that you need to loosen in order to make the pump move back and forth. And then there's a bolt that you need to loosen in order to loosen the tension on that belt, and then it easily comes off. Pretty straightforward. And then there's also the same thing for the alternator. There is the nut right above the pulley there, and then you loosen that nut in order to make the alternator adjustable. And then there's a bolt that you loosen and tighten in order to loosen and tighten that tension and move the alternator back and forth. So that's how you remove the belts off the pulley. I know there's a lot more steps to the process when you have the motor inside of the car with more added parts, but I wanted to give you all a better perspective of what it takes with minimal components in the way. That's where I'll end the breakdown process for the front side of the motor, since all the parts currently on the front I would like to get cleaned up aside from the alternator for now. Just FYI, I am labeling the sides of the motor as the cold side and the hot side for reference when I'm speaking on locations for identification. I feel that's pretty self-explanatory, so it'll be like this for pretty much all my videos. So now that we can shift our focus to the cold side of the motor, I would like to start on the motor mounts as well as the mounts and brackets for the alternator. There are 4 bolts, I believe they're 14 millimeters, that you need to remove for the engine mount there. I had to use the extendo and the motorized ratchet just because it's a lot easier to use. Feel free to comment below at any time, and maybe we can discuss how I do things in the process. I can't say I'm a professional and I do not do this for a living, but I enjoy working on cars and being productive in any way I can. I'm planning to have a much better platform and a comfortable space for all my work, but this is all that I have for you guys right now. Now let's get back to it. I went ahead and cracked out the 14 millimeter deep socket just to get the bolts and nuts out for the alternator. There's one here on the back of the alternator that you need to get out, and then there's the tension bolt there that you need to get up from the side, and then as well as the 2 bolts and nuts for the top and bottom of the alternator to remove. You have 3 brackets that you need to remove. The main one for the alternator, there's a support bracket there, and as well as a second support bracket to hold up that alternator. These bolts are 14 millimeter bolts. And then you also have 12 millimeter bolts here at the bottom, 2 right under the mounting bracket for the alternator, and then the 2 that are holding up the bracket for the bracket. Everything was going so smooth until I cracked my 30-year-old socket that I got from my great-grandmother. But yeah, go ahead and crack those out. Pretty simple, straight and forward. Go ahead and get rid of that leaf there, any debris that you need to remove. Very interesting that they have that bracket there, but I'm sure it's for support. But that's pretty much it on the cold side for those mounts and brackets right around the intake manifold. Now we can focus on the intake manifold itself. So go ahead and grab you a 12mm socket and any tools you feel would be needed for this removal successfully. I went ahead and did a zigzag pattern to remove these bolts. So you can disregard in this video how I removed the intake manifolds. Here is the photo of the install process for the intake manifold. It looks to be upside down, so just look at it from right side up. But this is for the install, so you want to do it in the removal process, which is pretty much doing it in the opposite direction of the number order. So go ahead and start on the outermost bolts from right to left, and then work your way in to loosening the bolts from the inside. Or you can just do it in the zigzag pattern that I've been doing. Just do it gently, kind of take your time. First I loosened the hardware, and then I removed it fully after that. But go ahead and also remove this 10mm or 12mm bolt that's holding that brake booster hose. That way it is not in the way when you're ready to remove the whole intake manifold. Start with the nuts on the outside of the intake manifold. Go ahead and get those removed. And then you want to go from the inside to the outside, from left and right, top and bottom of the bolts for the intake manifold. And then once you get all those bolts out, there are a few vacuum hoses that you need to remove under the intake manifold, and then there are a few hoses from the throttle body that you need to remove, as well as the brackets holding that bigger vacuum hose. And then there's one below the throttle body that you need to remove. And then you want to go ahead and get the vacuum line on top of the fuel line to remove from the valve cover. And then you want to get under and get the sensor. I almost forgot that. Get your knock sensor off. I believe that's a 12 or 14mm bolt, and go ahead and reinstall that bolt so you don't lose it. You don't want to lose that. And then get the idle air control valve vacuum hoses from under the intake manifold on the back side and the front side, just so it's easier for you to remove the intake manifold. You can keep those hoses on there or remove them as well, but whatever is feasible for you. So now that we have this off, you have the intake gasket there. Pretty straightforward. You want to pop off the hoses there, and that's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward, not too much to it. I thought it was gonna be a lot more difficult, but as you can see, I didn't have much of a challenge removing everything. I am going to be posting a separate video for the intake manifold and the fuel rail separately of doing removal and cleaning process, so stay tuned for that video coming up soon. Don't be that guy and misplace and lose all your hardware. Go ahead and just put it back on the motor. That way you know where they are if you plan on reinstalling everything right away. To end this video, I am announcing that I am doing a separate video on a heater core bypass in detail on the most simplest way to have a bypass system. And then also stay tuned for the separate video of me doing the breakdown and removal of the hot side of the motor. Once again, feel free to comment below on how you think I did on this video and suggestions or recommendations on how I could do better or something different. Thank you for tuning in on this video on the cold side breakdown and removal, and I'm so geeked to keep this going and show you guys what I have going on for the future.